Good evening everyone. So what do we have here? A new game, a new sport for my channel. What could it be? I'll show you a picture of the field. There it is. Australian Rules Football, Aussie Rules. Game played in 4 quarters of 20 minutes. 18 players per team plus 4 substitutes, or interchange players as they're called, and an injury substitute. Without a doubt, these guys probably are the most fittest players to play sport, because they play on a field the size of a cricket pitch and they're running around for an hour and 20 minutes. If you haven't seen the game, then there's plenty of actual games on YouTube. Just look for AFL 2021, 2022 and you'll find a game. It's a fascinating game, and effectively the game that I'm going to show you, it breaks the field down into 3 sections. You've got, if you're going this way, I can draw on this, it doesn't matter. If you're going this way, then this is your defensive 50, and this is your forward 50, and this is the midfield. Obviously if you're going that way, then this is the forward 50 and this is the defensive 50. I'm just giving you some background of the game. And it has 4 posts at the end of each of the field. The 2 larger ones in the centre, if you kick between those you get a goal, which is worth 6 points, and if you miss but go between these 2 or these 2, you get 1 point. If the ball goes between these middle posts but a defender touches it, it's 1 point, and that is called a behind. And also if you hit the post, it is also a behind. And the way that you'll see scoring done this, you'll see something like 2, 8, 14, and effectively that is 2 goals and 8 behinds, and a goal is worth 6 points and a behind is worth 1. So 6 times 2 is 12, and I can't count because that should be 20, plus 8, which is equal to 20, and that's how you get the 20. So you know, you could be on this side, you could be 3-0 and you'd be losing because it'd be 18 to 20. But that's how the scoring works. There are 18 players per team. You've got 6 defenders, 6 midfielders and 6 forwards. You also have 4 interchange players and 1 injury sub that can only be brought on if there's an injury. And basically they run around kicking the ball between the posts, and the one with the most points at the end of it wins. It's a fascinating game. I'm not trying to make light of it. Please go and watch a game. They really are fit blokes. The ball starts with a bounce up in the centre here, where the referee bounces the ball. And I've lived in Australia and I've actually been to a footy game, and I've also held one of these footballs, and they're impossible. They're impossible to hold, and you'll see that if you watch a game. So on to the game. Footy blast. And here's where I have to do some caveats, etc, etc. Footy blast is not a play game. It's a game devised by Chris Wiseman, and he kindly sent me a copy of this. It is based on the Soccer Blast, Hockey Blast engine, and Chris has discussed with Keith, and for all intents and purposes, Keith's not going to be taking up the game. He doesn't have the time, he's got other things on his mind, and he's quite happy for Chris to develop this and use the engine and keep the name Footy Blast. And you'll be able to tell. I'll show you one of the teams. The next game I'm going to play is Hamilton against Geelong, and as you can see from the cards there, let's zoom in on a card. They look pretty much like the play cards that you were all used to. It has 6 attributes, I suppose you could say: skill, tackle, clear, 1%, disposal and star, and the rules will tell you how to use those. You have the name of the player, the mark, the kick and the ruck. They become important in the game. 95 here, it's the same as the play games. If you want to decide who can play in the game or who's eligible, you roll 2 d10s, and if it's lower than that number, then he's eligible to play. The one thing that you will notice is that some have a unfilled star, and effectively I couldn't work out what this was, and I asked Chris this, and it's a clever idea actually. If you get a ground blast, which is like the blasts in any of the play games, you get additional stars if you're taking a kick, and this tells you that if you've got a unfilled star, then you get 1 extra on a blast. If you've got filled stars, you get 2 extra on a blast. So he would be 2 on a blast, he would be 6 on a blast. It's called a ground blast in this game. So you get 2 teams, Geelong, and as I said, I'm going to play Geelong and Hawthorn, and don't call them Geelong. They're called Geelong. And as you can see, they're all nicely coloured, and they're also all mixed up now because I didn't put them in the right order. They're all nicely coloured. 6 forwards. You've got the positions. Some can play multiple. I actually don't know what the R is, so I forgot to ask Chris that. So Chris, if you can just leave me a comment as to what the R means. So all these are used, and the mark, kick and ruck values are used in the game, and you have 6 forwards, 6 defenders and 6 midfielders. Let's just come out. So you get the rules instructions, and it's 5 pages, and this chart here, you don't actually need it if you use these charts. These are the fields. So if I just move these out, so you set them up whatever way you want. I set them up side by side, and as you can see, or maybe you can't, I'll zoom in. You'll not see all the, you'll see there are 6 sections. They've all got numbers from 1 to 100, and that is significant when you're deciding who's being kicked to for a mark, or who's taking a kick or whatever. You put your players inside at the right positions. These numbers here, 1 to 6, are the positions that you're going to need for when you're checking an individual player against one of the opponents. Just let me come out of here, make it a bit bigger so that you can read it a bit better. So as you can see, defensive, forward, midfield, forward, defence. So one team you've got defensive, midfield, forward, and the other team you've got forward, midfield, defence, and I quite like that. A good design this by Chris, because when you're checking against a skill or a trait, whatever you want to call them, you're either checking individual players or a section of those players. So if you just get dice out here, I'm going to use a decider die. That's what I use to decide who's in possession and what zone they're in. So this team is in possession and they're in their defensive zone. If it comes up and says, let's just stick 2 players on here, if it comes up and says I want to check the star quality of offence 6, team in possession 6, team not in possession 1, then I know it's that top line. You only use one line or one player. So if you're checking a line like you do in the football, you go along and count them up, and whoever wins the battle. But there is an advanced rule, and it's in the rule book, by which if they're tied, you roll the dice, and if it's 1 to 4, then it's the team in possession who win. 5 and 6, the team not in possession win. If they have a better than two or better difference in the traits, then that goes to 1 to 5. So the home would win, the visitors, the possession would win, the non-possession would only win on a 6. So hope that's a bit clear as mud, probably. The other thing that you're going to need is you're going to need a lot of these. Interchanges happen every 10 minutes, and I'll do a game at some stage so you can see it. So if you bring your interchange players on, and let's say Cameron is an interchange player and he's swapped, then when that player comes back on, so let's say he took the place of Blickabs, I'm just putting them in, I'm not putting in the right sections, but so he's actually started the game, and after 10 minutes he's come off, and with the start of the second half you put a chip on him so that you know that he has had his rest. Every single starter must have 10 minutes rest, so you're going to need 30 odd chips. Similarly here, if Burgoyne came off for Kegler and then he comes back on halfway through at the start of the second, you put a chip on him so you know not to take him off again, effectively. And at half time you can reset to your starting players, and what you should find is by the time you get to the start of the 4th period, there's only 2 players that have not rested. So you then take 2 players off and 2 of the interchange players, and then halfway through the second half you can take the other 2 interchange players off. So those are the game boards, and then the only other thing that you need are the charts. So if you've played Soccer Blast or Hockey Blast, action chart, roll the 2 dice, get a number. These are also dependent on what section the team in possession are in. So if you, let's take a couple of dice here, we roll an 8 and it's a tackle. This is a 1-on-1, and this is there is no check to see what trait they use. It's always the offensive disposal and the defensive tackle, and that doesn't mean that if you're in if the defense have got the ball in their own defensive zone. Let me get my little thing up. So if we're going that way and we are here, and the defense have the ball, and the team going that way have the ball, then they are the offense, even though they're in the defensive zone. So the offense would always use the disposal, and the defense would always use the tackle. So you roll it. 3 is a bouncing ball, and then you would look at the green die and say 4 is the clear versus skill, and this one is the whole team in that section. So you'd have the defenders looking for clear because that's the offensive team's skill, and the other team who are in the offense part, even though they're not in possession, then they will look at the skill. There is a little rule there again that comes in, that you can use the red die to make it a bit more interesting, because obviously once you've got those lines set up, if you're going to take clear B skill, then the team will always win, but the red dice will give you an extra option. Now, the game says to you that you need 7 d6s of these colours and 2 d10s to resolve player positions, which is what the numbers are on the game board. I use all 7 because it's easy, and it also has colour codes on the thing, but you could get away with using 2 dice and just keep rolling 1, you know. But I roll all 7 at a time every time, and if after you've rolled it, it says you've got to roll the yellow dice again, then I will roll them all again. Just keeps it consistent. So there's your action chart. You have highlight reels and rare plays. I've not had a rare play yet, but I have had an injury, which was interesting. And then you have another chart, which is your referee's chart, your kick at goal, your miss chart, and your throw and bounce chart. And that in essence is the game. I played one game. I'll show you the score sheet. Oh, it's timed in 30-second segments, and you move a segment every time you roll on the action card, action sheet. So this is the game that I played, West Sydney and Port Adelaide, and as you can see, West Sydney 9-8-62 beat Port Adelaide 8-9-57, and you can see where the blasts are. I'm not going to go through the technicalities of what you do with the blast, but in effect the team that loses the check gets a missed shot. So you use the miss chart here, and the team that won the challenge get the opportunity for a kick. But you'll see that when I do a game. I mark these sections in yellow because they're the way we do the change. If your blast takes you past the end of the period, you just go to the end of the period and you resolve it, just as you would if it finished in the middle. So there's the score sheet, there's the game. I've enjoyed playing the one game that I have done. Made a lot of mistakes, 18 teams, a lot of cutting out, but at the end of the day it's well worth it. So hopefully you'll enjoy watching me play a few of these games, and until next time, thank you and goodbye.